we've got storm action ramping up in the Great Plains and even down there in Florida. They're getting a little bit of storm activity in the western part of the state and in the Everglades. And you can see those anvils streaming up to the north. Pretty good indication of shear out in that region. Welcome to the Meteorology Lab. I'm Tim Vasquez, and we're going to take a look at the severe weather possibilities over the next week or two. So let's head into the charts. I've got the surface plots all ready to go. So here's the big picture. So instead of looking at the fine-grained details in the data, we're just going to take a quick look at a couple representative stations. You can see there in New Mexico, we've got the winds starting to pick up out of the southwest. We're seeing gusts up to 27 in some areas, and the dew points are also on their way down. 12 at not sure what station that is, Santa Rosa, I think, and then 6 at Tucumcari, and then we contrast that out to the west, or to the east. Oklahoma City there showing 84 over 69, and down along the Red River, 87 over 61. So in between, we've definitely got the dry line all set up in West Texas there. So what's that producing? Here's GR level 2. Showing a little cluster of storms just south of Wellington, north of Childress, and you can kind of see that these are not too impressive. They're taking on some of the structure that's kind of associated with a sheared environment, but we're not seeing that supercell type structure there. And let me see how it looked a little earlier. Yeah, not much improvement, and they're just kind of drifting up to the northeast, about to cross over into Oklahoma there. And one feature that we've seen is this outflow boundary. So it appears these are some fairly effective outflow generators. You can see that outflow surging very swiftly to the northwest there. Now the radar site there at Amarillo is very close to that outflow boundary, so this is kind of a good opportunity to sample some of the features that we see. So let's switch over to spectrum width. You don't hear too much about this product, and I feel this is kind of underutilized. But we can pick out that outflow boundary, and you may not need to use it right now when it shows up very nice on reflectivity, but a lot of times those outflow boundaries can be embedded in storms, and you can't pick that out unless you go to spectrum width, and then often it will show up. Also base velocity there. Let's zoom in. So what are we looking at here? The reds are always your outbound. Those are your positive velocities. We find that up here, and that's on the northwest side of the radar site. So that tells us that there's a flow kind of like that at this time. So to zero that down a little bit further, we can find the maximum winds. Here's the max inbound. So those are the negative winds coming in. And then right around here we have the maximum outbound. So without even looking at the VAD velocity wind profile, we can kind of see what the wind profile is doing. And in very complicated environments, the velocity wind profile is likely to fail or not be representative. So you do need to I'm starting to lose it already. I'm only 5 minutes in. You have to know how to go to the base velocity data and make sense of what you're seeing there. So that's pretty much it. That's how we find that out. And if we want to take this one step further, we can divide this up into different levels. And altitude is just a function of your distance from the radar. So if we want to know what's going on maybe 2,000 or 3,000 feet up in the atmosphere, what we can do is we can read the cursor display at the bottom, and you can see down here that shows the altitude of the cursor above ground level, and it helps to go up to higher tilts so the beam can get in the higher altitudes very quickly. So here we are up at 3.1 degrees, and as I move the cursor away from the radar, you can see that readout down there increasing to 2,000 feet, and then 3,000 feet. So northwest of Amarillo, we're cutting into that outflow up at about 3,000 feet. And we can also kind of look at the wind profile and find out where the peak winds are at that radius. So that might differ from the winds we have down here. And in fact, yeah, I can see a difference in speed along this radial right here. See, there's some very strong winds right there. And if I put the cursor in there, I can see that about 1,100 feet above the ground, that's where the winds are strongest. So this is a fairly hefty bit of outflow heading up to the northwest there. And if we had a little bit more moisture up to the northwest, that could be enough to kick up that little cell there. But I'm not too sure that that's going to be able to do that. Yeah, so it's already being undercut there. So very spectacular stuff on the radar imagery. Okay, and we do have another cluster of storms up further north. It's starting to get active, and way up there in Kansas we can see a couple of cells here. This is getting about 150 miles away from the radar, so we really need to switch over to Dodge City. So let me go ahead and do that. Just click on that radar site. A couple of tornado warnings up along Interstate 70. So we're looking at right around Quinter. That's kind of a familiar name. And Oberlin. 2 tornado warnings up in that area. Okay, let me check in on chat and look at the stream stats, make sure everything's working. Because we're pulling in all this radar data. Okay, 0 drop frames, that's good. Let me see how everybody's doing in chat here. Okay, let's see. Robert Pleasant is here, 74 degrees and partly cloudy in eastern Tennessee. David Lumbert, 81 degrees, dew point 66 in Arkansas. Willie Greenway checking in there from Georgia. Fun with Tech and Sue M. They're in Indiana. Carl Berghoff is with us, and Erica Baker reporting 79 out of Coffeyville. Clyde Hoadley is reporting some flooding north of his area. Burl H is here, and Ryan Toomey is about to get some action over the next week, and possibly a little wet weather. We're watching that tropical storm coming up out of the Gulf later on, and we've been kind of debating back and forth whether that's a real feature or whether it's something spurious the models have spun up, but we'll find out soon enough. Ryan Toomey is mentioning the tornado-warned storm near Quinter. Watching Periscope there with Jeff Petrowski. Adam Davis reporting allergy season is up too. Shirley Keast, 72 in Michigan. Alpha Lax, Dr. Wells checking in. Welcome to the webcast. And Jumping Flash also. Tied the record in San Antonio, 97, and yeah, we were getting pretty close around the Dallas area. The record was about 95, or yeah, I can't remember if it was 97 or 95, but we were very close to that there. And Mike Estwick, Denver, 58 degrees and showers. Okay, so we're seeing numerous cells there in Kansas. So it appears we're not looking at very much of a cap this afternoon. Numerous cells going up all across that area there, and even some cells further east around Greensburg, down to Coldwater, and all the way down to Woodward. So we're not seeing the classic supercell structure on any of these storms right now. The same with this cluster. Nothing really stands out at this time. Here's a good isolated cell, that Quinter storm. So I guess Jeff was able to pick out the right one and got right up in there, and we can see there's a bit of an outflow or an inflow notch on that storm. And this is developing that bit of supercell structure. Let's check out the velocity. And we are showing, at the very least, a meso in that. This is about, let's see, about 78 miles from the radar, so I'm not too sure whether we're going to be able to detect anything like a tornado in this. The beam is a little bit too wide and too high to pick that out. But we can sample the velocity. Let's see, we're seeing about 37 out, maybe about 40 knots out, and then about 13 in. And let me go ahead and set up the storm relative velocity. Okay, and this will give us more of a balanced view there. So I'm going to set that at about 200 at 25. Maybe I'll back that off to about 20. All right, so at this time it shows that the meso is, at least from what we can see at that range, it's measuring about 3 miles wide there. I'm not seeing anything at that range that's indicating a tornado at this time, at least on that radar. And then looking at the other storms further down, this has the appearance of a circulation right there. That's, I think, the wrong rotation, though. So we're seeing outbound right there and inbound. No, that's correct there. That's good. So let's see about where that is. Okay, that's way back in this stuff. So nothing there. This cell is looking interesting. This is give me a landmark just north of Garden City. I may have to play around with this storm vector. Let me see if I can extract some of the velocities out of here a little bit. Okay, so I'm just playing around with the storm motion, seeing if I can get this. I'm trying to pull the rotation out of this where I can really see it. I see maybe some weak rotation right there. So the centroid on that would be about right there. So, well, it's not very much at this time. Let me go up to higher tilt and look for consistency. And yeah, now we're kind of seeing a little bit of rotation there, and the diameter on that is about 2.5 miles. Looking at only about 35 to 40 knots of rotation, and then going up to higher levels, going up to about 10,000 feet, 15,000. Not seeing much of anything as far as a couplet in that. So let's go back down. I'm going to go to 0.8 and look at some of the other cells. Nothing stands out in that stuff. There's a little bit of motion in here. Let's kind of pick out what's going on. Tail end Charlie storm there. So we're looking for the updraft in this area here. So we can switch back and see what's going on. Keep in mind the radar is that way. So it looks like we're seeing some outbounds right there and some inbounds there, so just some broad rotation at this time. Looks like maybe about 40 or 50 knots of shear in that storm. And then just checking out the other tilts. This goes down to a lower tilt. That looks kind of interesting there. That diameter is a little tighter than what we usually see, or what we've seen so far today. So that's only 1.5 miles. We're seeing about 55 to 60 knots of rotation. So I'm going to set that dot, and we're seeing that right there in that updraft region. So that cell there has some potential, and that's going to be northwest of Ulysses. Anybody else? How are these looking? Well, here we can see the inflow. See that green right there? That's the inflow, contrasting with the outflow in red. So just looking at that alone, I can see a little bit of vorticity in this area. That would be an area to watch. So that's in this region right there. That's going to be crossing over to Kansas shortly. Another bit of rotation showing right around here. I'm not sure what that is. It's kind of an unusual area there. Got another bit of rotation kind of in there. And let me work up the line. Yeah, these all look quite outflowish. If I look at base velocity, this is up at about 2,000 feet, and I'm picking up 56 knots. Yeah, just widespread 40s and 50 knot flow there. So I would expect some wind damage out of these storms. Okay, so that's kind of the overview. Let's go ahead and take a look at the charts. Switch over. This is what the SPC outlooks were like today, just an enhanced risk for Kansas. Slight risk up into northeast Colorado and down into the panhandles. And the watches, we're only looking at severe thunderstorm watches this evening. Storm reports so far, looks like we're picking up that one cell there near Quinter for a tornado, but mostly just sporadic hail and wind so far. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the synoptic scale and start looking at what's happening. Might as well start with the upper level chart here. Look at it, looking at 250 millibars. So we're seeing that jet there emerging from Arizona and New Mexico. That appears to be the polar front jet, and then the subtropical jet extends across the Red River and down into Arkansas and Mississippi there. And then we can see the upper level low in Idaho. We should be able to see that very clearly on satellite. We should see some rotation in that feature. Upper level ridge across the Dakotas down into Iowa. And then let's go down to 700 millibars. This is our basic check of what the cap is looking like. Running about 10 Celsius there at Dodge City. So that's going to put it in about the moderate range there for cap strength. The stronger cap is down in Texas there. 850 millibars. Showing a low-level jet this morning there at Amarillo. And we can see a little bit of this lack of moisture there at Del Rio. Only 8 degrees Celsius dew points, which is about 46 Fahrenheit. And 7, that's going to be about 45 Fahrenheit there at Fort Worth. So we are having trouble with moisture, especially as you get further south. Amarillo showing about 54 dew points there at 5,000 feet. So we're kind of working with the moisture that we have there in the panhandles and western Oklahoma this evening here. All right, the thickness and isobars. It appears we have a front coming out of Montana and the Dakotas. There's a cold high there over Saskatchewan. And this is painting a front from about Minnesota through, looks like about Nebraska and out towards Wyoming. And then we would have a warm front across the Great Lakes, kind of like that there. And then southward from that, I would expect to be finding a dry line close to where we have that thunderstorm activity. All right, so that's the basic setup. Anything else going on? Well, we've got the Bermuda High way out to the east, but it looks like the influence of that is starting to die off. Looks like they're still getting some easterly flow there in Florida and the Carolinas. And I can see some vague troughing through Arkansas and up the Ohio River Valley, so that's probably helping to generate those showers in that area. It could be a little weak warm front maybe moving north. That's kind of what I'm thinking might be there. And then yesterday we were seeing that cold front moving through New Mexico. Looks like that's starting to die off as we get the modification back behind the air mass. That very intense heating working on Arizona and the Four Corners. So there may not be much left of that front. Maybe just some remnants there in the mid-levels. All right, let's check out the NAM. I'm going to start with the the Central Plains right here. This is how it looked earlier today. This would be about 4 p.m. I can definitely see there's cold air on its way south. Looks like we have a low pressure system in Wyoming. So that would tell me that the frontal system probably extends somewhat like that, and then probably wraps back up to the north as a warm front. And let's see, we've got outflow pools being generated there on the rapid refresh. There's a good one right there around La Junta, just southwest of there between La Junta and Trinidad. And then it looks like the model is actually verifying pretty well. This is the 7 p.m. Prague, and it's got southwestern Kansas lighting up there. The front is really standing out now. Looks like maybe a little bit of circulation there in southern Nebraska. And let's roll that forward, see what things look like overnight. Looks like the front and the cold pool being generated by that convection just surges eastward through Kansas. Looks like that'll probably pull into Wichita sometime close to midnight. But embedded in that, you can see this cyclone. And we may see that moving to the northeast overnight. So that's kind of a feature I'm going to be keeping an eye on there. And then down to the south, it appears that outflow and the front extend like that around midnight and continuing to surge south there. So by tomorrow morning around dawn, 12Z soundings should still be showing tropical air there in Oklahoma City, but it looks like at Dodge City they're going to be under that polar air mass, so it should be showing a little bit cold in that region. Same thing at Topeka. It looks like it's going to be worked over by outflow air, and that outflow will be continuing to push into Missouri as that MCS drives eastward. Then taking a look down in Texas. Okay, here's what we got for the current time. It's laying down a lot of outflow, all the way from about Abilene up to, looks like around Elk City and up to Dodge City. And let's see how that changes overnight. We don't have the upper level support down here in Texas that they do up in Kansas, so we're not going to see the Amarillo convection surge eastward. That should start dying off. So what that means is that the tropical air is going to continue flowing northward overnight, kind of unimpeded. And that should kind of prime things for tomorrow. So by tomorrow morning, it's going to be looking like this. That front is going to be approaching Amarillo. There's those boundaries there. And the dry line is likely set up. I probably don't have that placed very well. Let me try that one more time. There we go. That's a little bit better. So this is kind of a hybrid front and outflow boundary. And then down to the south, just west of Lubbock, I would expect to find the dry line kind of in that area. So that should be the setup for tomorrow. And then let's just take a quick peek into the afternoon hours. Looks like a little bit of baroclinicity along that front. Maybe a closed low around the Alva area tomorrow. And that should be working up the boundary towards Kansas. The rest of the front should continue pressing south through Plainview and Childress. So as we get up to the evening hours, it's going to be looking like this. It looks like we're probably going to be breaking that cap along that front in northern Oklahoma, and possibly a few other cells there around the Amarillo area. And you can certainly pick out the dry line right around Midland and Lubbock. Temperatures back there close to 100 degrees. And then out here in Texas, in East Texas and North Texas, we're going to have that southeast flow feeding that activity there. Okay, so that's kind of the setup for tomorrow. So let's move over to the satellite and see how things are looking. Here's the satellite loop for earlier today. And that's showing all the thunderstorm activity there on the Great Plains. And you can see not only the rotation where we have that upper level low there around Salt Lake City and Idaho, but also the extensive convection. There's a lot of cold air aloft, and that's helping to steepen the lapse rates in that area. And so that's giving us a lot of scattered thunderstorm activity, showers and weak thunderstorms across parts of the Great Basin area. And let's see if we can pick that out on the infrared. So there's the loop, and we're loading that right now. You can see the storms breaking out there along the dry line, and you can see that very coarse granular look underneath that upper level low in this area, in addition to the rotation. And out to the east, it looks like we got that tropical air moving northward. And it looks like there's a little bit of a upper level low in this area right here, Ohio River region. All right, so let's take a look at chat, see how things are going. Got Ron Chalfant joining us in California there. And Alpha Lax asking for the next chance of storms in Dallas. That's a good question. I guess we're going to be looking at... I don't really see anything organized until maybe next weekend. Not this weekend, but the next one. We may have a chance around then. Also, I think maybe the atmosphere is going to be turning a little bit more tropical, maybe towards Monday and Tuesday. So maybe a chance around then. But we'll just have to take a look at the charts and see what's going on there. Softball-sized hail in Quinter from Ryan. And Ryan Toomey is reporting large bowl-shaped hanging over Quinter. Rapid RFD surge. Huge hail core rolling into Quinter. Baseball-sized hail on the side of the road. And yeah, let's take a look at that storm there. And Carl Burkhoff reminding us we can click on the warning to set the vector. Okay, and he says remember to like, and yeah, that's definitely appreciated. Hit that like button if at all possible. All right, checking on our storm there at Quinter. I guess we should switch over to Goodland if we're going to look at that, so why don't we do that? Looks like we've lost the tornado warning on that storm, but it's certainly producing some hail. So there's our lone isolated storm there around Quinter. Storm relative velocity is showing very weak rotation. So we're looking in that area right there. The radar side is located to the west-northwest. So these are the outbound winds right there, and then the inbounds are here. So that's not much of any circulation. And then there's this other circulation further to the east. Let me see what that one is. That could be an old meso. Yeah, well, I don't know. That could be the new one. Let me back that up and see what's going on here. Yeah, that just seemed to have appeared there in the last frame. So I'm thinking there could be some cyclic development going on. So that's going to be about 5 miles southeast of Quinter. And this one appears to have a bit of strong rotation, 43 out and 14 in. That's about 55 knots of shear. And it appears very, very tight. And distance from the radar on that one, that's going to be about 75 miles. Yeah, that's the problem there with North Kansas. There's not really any good radar sites out around Russell. Even around Quinter, not much as far as that goes. So it looks like they may have put out a warning on that. Looks like we've lost that rotation with the last frame, but let's go up to the higher tilts. Yeah, there's some much better rotation. It's a little bit broader, but it is more intense. We're seeing probably about 60 or 70 knots a shear up at about 10,000 feet there. There it is right there, up at about 13,000. And there we have about 60 to 70 knots a shear. So that's our storm there at Quinter. That's what it's doing at this time. This one's got a hook there around Colby. The rotation on that is kind of broad. This is the meso. That's what the rotation looks like. And then we've got this tighter bit of rotation right there. That is on the order of about 55 to 60 knots right here. And then let me check out that hook there, see what's going on with that. Check out some higher tilts. I'm not seeing any very strong gate-to-gate shear, maybe some back in here. That's up at the higher tilts, up at about 5,000 feet. And that's kind of on the back side. That could be an old frame there. Let me go back to that. Let's see. That was 0130. Yeah, that's something on the back side there. I haven't looked at this long enough to really see what's going on. But while we got this on the screen, let's take a look at the cross-section. I'm going to set a west to east cross-section through that updraft. See that notch right there? That's the updraft. And here's what our storm looks like. And wow, this has some overhang, doesn't it? Your low-level scan is basically this stuff right here, a bit aloft. Let me show you that on the regular imagery here. So I'm going to go up to the higher tilts. I'm going to set this dot right in the middle of that updraft, and watch what happens when I go up to higher tilts. Yeah, see how we find that overhang over that updraft area, and that's some very intense reflectivity right in there. There's probably some very large wet hailstones percolating in that thing, getting 75 to 77 dBZs, and that's way up in the upper end of anything I've seen in all my years of looking at radar data. So this is one of the higher reflectivity storms that I've seen there. But that's aloft there. That's in this region right there. So that'll probably be falling out maybe as some hail on the backside of that storm, maybe in that updraft region there towards the west. So a pretty good storm there. That's north of Colby. But just not much rotation in that thing. Maybe about 50 knots right in that area. Yep, that's right out in that updraft area, so that's where I would want to be if I was chasing, maybe somewhere just to the east of that, looking into that notch. All right, let's take a look at the satellite. I've got a couple of animations to share with you guys. Let's see how Texas broke out. Yeah, we can look at Kansas too. Hang on a second, let me get this straightened out. Okay. Just checking on the health of the stream. Everything looking good. All right, let's go ahead and roll this forward. So this will show you the development of those cells there in the Texas Panhandle. A couple different clusters, some out towards Canadian, others around Dalhart. These bases out here would be a little bit higher than the stuff out to the east. So that's some pretty straightforward development there. And let's take a look up to the north. This is where some of our stronger storms are at this time. So Quinter located up in this region right there. And you can see these cells coming together I think that's the Quinter storm right there. Definitely looking pretty impressive. And we can also see the cold air coming to the south. See in this area here? North flow coming into the Goodland area. And that's giving us kind of a difference in the texture of the low cloud field. Often that can be an indication of strong shear in the environment. Yeah, see that little surge right there? A lot of straticube coming in from north to south in those northeastern counties there. Okay, let's take a look at our forecast, and then we'll get back and take one last look at the storms. So what's going to happen tonight? Well, we're almost assured of an MCS overnight from what we've seen. High resolution rapid refresh going for, yeah, these storms just kind of moving eastward, gradually dying off towards dawn around the Kansas City and Chanute area. However, that cold air is coming south, and by dawn we're going to be seeing the gradient or the boundary running something like that. Down in Texas, probably a very similar feature, very similar progression, except the storm should die off a lot quicker. So there they are, moving into the Oklahoma City area around midnight and then dying out. Looks like the model is going for a few elevated cells around the Ardmore area. Maybe some strong moist advection coming up with a low-level jet helping to feed those, but none of that's going to be surface-based or very well organized. Okay, and then we can see the with the very last frame there, some cells going up around around noon, around Memphis and down along the Caprock. So that may be the start of tomorrow's convection. So let's take a look at the upper air, see what things are looking like. The setup for this evening is like this. There's the frame for 7 p.m. So the jet is coming out of the far west Texas area. Looks like the jet max is somewhere right in this area right there. So a lot of the better lift is working on West Kansas and Colorado. So for tomorrow, what are we going to be seeing? The morning setup is going to be kind of like this here. Looks like a jet max crossing Amarillo and moving up towards Kansas. So we're looking at maybe some organized activity for Kansas later tomorrow. So by evening, looks like that jet is moving across Kansas up towards Nebraska. So we're probably looking at that area there for some storm activity. And then going into Sunday, there's Sunday morning right there. Looks like a ridge moving into the southern plains, but a couple more troughs approaching from the west. So we're likely going to see more storms, especially in West Texas, where the elevations are higher. And so we should see some storms going up in that area. Actually, looks like a little bit of ridging working across Texas for Sunday. But, yeah, there's that low spinning out there in California. And then going into Monday, that's the setup for Monday afternoon. Looks like a ridge covering a lot of the southern plains. So not a whole lot of help. That low is just not kicking out fast enough. So we'll just have to see what happens for the work week. So let's go ahead and put it together. Look at the NAM forecast for tomorrow. There's our activity there in southeast Nebraska. There will probably be a few cells southward towards Topeka. But as you can see, there's not much going on in the rest of the plains further south. So let me set a sounding around the Stillwater area. Actually, I guess I'd be closer to Blackwell. There's the forecast sounding. Looks like we've definitely got the moisture there. It's Looking at low to mid 60s dew points, but it looks like we're a little bit capped. Temperature of 90 degrees. I don't know, I think that would support convection. Wind profiles are looking marginal. There's the photograph right there. Very weak 0 to 1 kilometer shear, weak helicity, and marginal bulk wind difference there. So I think we could see some storms down further along the front, especially with strong low-level forcing. So I'm going to be looking for possibly some cells around McPherson down to Pratt. And then the model is going for probably more numerous storms as you get into the higher terrain there around Kenton and around La Junta. Then going into Sunday, yeah, okay, we did get the storms after all. Looks like an MCS progressing southeast along that front there overnight, breaking up around dawn, and then storms going up very early. This is 10 in the morning. Look at that. It looks like some elevated storms early in the day. That's going to mean outflow boundaries around the Red River. Model not breaking out much of anything, though. Let's see what the problem is. So we're looking at, let's see, what was this, Monday? No, this is Sunday. Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, we've gotten some warming aloft. See that column right there? I'm not able to pull out any strong capes out of the sounding. Because when you rise along, those moist adiabats, they stay very close to that temperature trace. So that points towards storms on the weak side if they do get going. And looks like maybe a little bit of a cap there, possibly interfering. But the model not breaking out much of anything for Sunday, except out in West Texas. Up in Illinois, we've been watching that area. It looks like the models have sped up a little bit on this surface system. There it is right there. They've gone a little further south. So we're probably going to be looking at Illinois instead of eastern Iowa. Maybe early on a little bit around the Quad Cities, but this is pointing towards around Springfield and Peoria and Joliet. Maybe some severe weather out in that region. Let's check out the soundings. I'll put that a little further south in the warm sector. I'm afraid if I place that too far north, it's going to sample some of that cool polar air up to the north. And what we see is, yeah, there's definitely enough CAPE to support severe weather. Not much capping and good moisture. Looks like upper 60s dew points. So I do think they have some potential for severe weather, and the algorithm there going for marginal tornadic. So that's going to be for Sunday in Illinois. Then for Monday, looks like a high pressure area across Michigan, so cool northerly flow spreading southward. I don't see anything organized. Looks like we got the lee side low developing there in Colorado. But the pressure gradient is kind of weak across Texas, and let's check out the soundings in that region. Sounding for western Oklahoma, showing poor lapse rates. So that's probably a consequence of that ridging over the area. The soundings are not, or the photographs not looking too bad there. Looks like some good 0 through 1 kilometer shear. Well, we'll call that marginal there. And a little bit of stretching of that bulk wind difference, but overall it looks like the instability is going to be a little bit of a problem. Mixed layer CAPE there, 1200. And I don't know, I think there probably is going to be some potential just because, you know, again, it's May, and sometimes these models kind of underestimate the potential for severe weather. The main thing that I'm not really seeing here is a good boundary for them to focus on. I see maybe a little bit of a trough in there. But the wind flow across Oklahoma and Texas is kind of divergent. So it really depends, I guess, on where the dry line is, and I'm thinking maybe that dry line is kind of far west. So I'm not really sure where the storms would be at this time, but we've got a few days to figure that out. All right, let's go ahead and head into the GFS. Look at the rest of the week real quick. And I'll probably start this around Monday. There's the Monday map and high pressure across the Great Lakes. Just kind of a featureless southerly flow on the Great Plains. Let's see what the GFS forecast sounding's like for Fort Worth. Got a loaded gun sounding and some decent moisture, but it is capped. So even with 91 degrees and mix all this moisture, it looks like we've got a cap to contend with and not much instability. So that's kind of a waste of a good loaded gun sounding. And look at that poor photograph there. If you see something like that, just stay home and watch some movies on Netflix or something. Possibly some activity on the high plains of New Mexico, though. It's a good place to get away from the crowds. Then for Tuesday, don't see any definite targets. So it looks like Colorado is coming together. Maybe some upslope flow there around Scottsbluff and Alliance, so I would probably head north for Tuesday. Yeah, there's storms there. And then for Wednesday, same deal, upslope flow in Nebraska. I would probably be focusing on that area, maybe northeast Colorado. Unless you want to go down to the eastern New Mexico area. Then for Thursday, very similar situation, still some upslope flow there. In northeast Colorado, there's the storms going later. And then for Friday, yeah, it looks like that low area shifts a little bit further south. So here I would probably be looking at the I-70 area or around Kit Carson down to maybe Eads for some high plains action. Okay, it looks like after that we've got a cold air mass pushing southeastward. See this high pressure up to the north? We're starting to bring some north flow into the Great Plains towards the end of next week. This is around Friday. So it looks like we're going to have some frontal storms in western Kansas there. And that front will sink southward, and a lot of the activities should start developing along that front in the afternoons. By Saturday, not much of anything else going. Yeah, actually, there's a little cell going up here in eastern Oklahoma. And I think a lot of these cells are just going to develop wherever the front is located as it surges south into Texas. And then just a quick look at the European model. And thanks to EuroWX.com, the folks at F5 Data for giving us their permission for this. I'll just run through this very quickly because this actually shows a lot of what the GFS has. Very similar situation. So let's see here. By Saturday evening, there's that activity there in northeast Colorado. I'm sorry, northeast Kansas and southeast Colorado. That's probably the best target there. Get north of that low. Maybe around Topeka, possibly. And it looks like the Euro is going for some cells along the dry line around Abilene. For Sunday, this is when things shift into Illinois. And the models have been kind of creeping south with that boundary, so we may be looking at central Illinois for severe weather. For Monday, that system pushes to the east, leaves very little on the Great Plains. I think that may be a down day. I guess maybe that New Mexico action is probably about the best target. Then we're starting to look at the upslope flow as we get into Wednesday and Thursday. And you can see a few MCSs develop up in that region overnight. When we see these MCSs at 12Z, that's a good sign that something got going earlier in the evening out to the west, like right around there. 12Z, see right here, 12Z Friday, probably early in the evening, something out in that region. So that's how I would interpret this European data. And then we start seeing things going downhill out in the Gulf. European model bringing a tropical storm up the west coast of Florida and up into Georgia. I guess these models have been kind of zeroing in on Florida for that tropical system, and let's see what the GFS did. Yeah, it's taking it along the east coast now and up into the Carolinas. But it's right around the same time frame. It's next weekend when that's going to be crossing around Florida, so we'll probably have a little extra action to look at. That's probably about all I've got as far as the charts go. So, yeah, that's about it. Let me take a look at the chat, see what we got going on here. Get caught up. Electric Dog is here, cool and wet in his area there. Thomas Fortner reporting a beautiful evening in Sioux Falls, bummed about the slow storm season. This has been a kind of a weird one. Carl Berghoff supplying some instructional stuff, so yeah, that's much appreciated. Adam Davis looking for the shortwave moving into the mid-Atlantic tomorrow. Ryan watching that system coming in from the Gulf for next week. And yeah, at the end of next week, we're going to have probably that big burst of cold air coming in out of Canada. So that may throw us back into the refrigerator for a couple days. But spring is not quite over. That's one thing to keep in mind. We don't really start shutting down until about mid-June, and then things shift up to the north. So you start playing more along Interstate 70 and into Nebraska as we get into late June. So we still got a ways to go here, many weeks, so I wouldn't totally write things off. Okay, yeah, I appreciate that, Ryan, and like Carl Berghoff said, please click the like button. That probably helps us bring in a few additional YouTube views. And let's see, that's probably about all I got here. So thanks all. Appreciate you all joining. We'll probably be back tomorrow since it is severe weather season. Normally I take a break on Saturday, but we'll go ahead and bring the stream up and see how things are looking. So have a good evening and enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you tomorrow. Take care.